I wish I could tell you the real stories. Holy shit.
All right, give us one.
No.
Why?
That's why I'm saying I don't want to tell you these stories. I don't want anybody to really know me.
All right, so boom. If you guys haven't already watched the Vince McMahon documentary over on Netflix, I highly suggest you go and give that a watch. It was incredibly interesting and well put together. So kudos to the Netflix team for making that happen. If you don't happen to have access to Netflix, then that's very unfortunate. So somewhere on the internet, you probably can mess around and find all 6 episodes. And as it pertains to my full review of the doc, I actually have clips of each episode included in my full review over on Patreon. Link is in my description, where I go completely in depth on each episode and the biggest stories of each episode as well. It's over an hour long, so if you wanted to watch that entire thing, feel free to go over there. Obviously, I can't utilize the clips here on YouTube because Netflix is going to mess around and block it and give the channel a strike and ruin everything that we come here to enjoy, so that's not what we're here to talk about. But one way or another, let's talk Vince McMahon, right? A very polarizing figure in the realm of professional wrestling. In fact, most people would say he's the most important figure in the realm of professional wrestling. And straight out the gate, the documentary touched on a ton of different things. They briefly mentioned the upbringing of Vince McMahon, what the trauma that he had to endure, the abuse that he had to endure. In fact, I think they probably touched on it for maybe at maximum 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, and just brushed up over it. In fact, Vince himself said to brush over it.
Throw it the fuck back there and go forward.
So he is not interested in talking about his upbringing. So moving forward from that, they didn't necessarily talk too extensively about how he was able to successfully force and buy his father out and acquire WWE and essentially boost it to heights never seen before. And a ton of people have always criticized McMahon in the realm of destroying professional wrestling because, well, for all intents and purposes, he pretty much killed all of the territories. But I've always said, let's keep it a buck. Hindsight being 2020, with the advent of social media and the boom of the internet, territories would have never lasted into the 2000s because, and on top of that, I'm pretty sure Ted Turner and WCW would have probably made the same move in the 90s that WWE made in the 80s in trying to not only go national, pretty much squeeze out the life out of all of the territories and strong arm and monopolize the wrestling business. So kudos to Vince, he was a visionary to make that happen. But the vast majority of scandals that was covered inside of this doc was very alarming because some people didn't know about a lot of the different scandals. Some of those they already knew, ranging from, I believe the first one that was covered was the Jimmy Superfly Snuka murder of his girlfriend in '83.
In hell, brother, it's gonna be hot. Hot, brother. No doubt.
Guilty! That nigga is guilty!
Jimmy Snuka was the biggest face in wrestling, the biggest money drawer in, or I should say, in the WWE. So with that being the reality of the situation, when this unfortunate passing of his girlfriend came about, what did they do? Sweep it under the rug. In fact, if you were to look and Google Jimmy Snuka incident, you'll see this wasn't just an isolated situation because there was history of domestic violence from Jimmy Snuka to his then girlfriend prior, and it was Vince McMahon, per the officer's notes, who had told his girlfriend not to go forth with a complaint towards Jimmy Snuka in an effort to not only protect Jimmy Snuka's image and what transpired, but also to protect his business. Despite the fact that the woman was looking forward to possibly getting a prosecutor, she backed down and listened to McMahon. Ultimately, later on, she fell off of a ledge and passed away. The coroner notes and everything of the investigation proved that there was indeed blunt force trauma and brain injuries and stuff and clear signs of abuse, and they were getting ready to pretty much sentence Jimmy Snuka of murder, but hey, he got away with it by way of dying and no longer being in the position to be able to stand trial, because I think they dropped the entire trial because he was not fit enough to be there, and he ended up dying like 3 weeks later over in 2017. Also, the pedo ring that Pat Patterson was involved in the 80s.
It was a pedophile ring.
He was Grandma Pecker.
where you had 3 executives in the WWF essentially taking advantage of young ring boys and young boys who was employed by the business or just helping out with the business, and 2 of them got penalized. Pat Patterson got fired, but ultimately made his way back into the business. Let's call it what it is. Despite how big of a trailblazer Pat Patterson just so happened to be, not only in the realm of wrestling, but also that being a homosexual wrestler, being able to rise to the #2 position in the company on the executive side. However, how many wrestlers over the course of the past 30 years have you heard, or even regular behind the scenes suits people talk about how Pat Patterson would unfortunately sexually harass them, or perhaps touch them in suggestive ways? In the documentary, Tony Atlas had mentioned, hey,
He was Grandma Pecker.
and what was he to do? Because Pat Patterson is more important to Vince's business than Tony Atlas is.
He's the #2 guy in the office.
So if Tony Atlas goes to Vince and says, hey, Pat doing all this other stuff, Tony Atlas is afraid of losing his job, and you've got families to take care of.
You either take it or you go home.
So you suck it up, take the fall, do the time in the business, to reference the Gotti movie. So this was a situation in which, essentially, despite the fact all of this was transpiring, Vince McMahon himself would turn a blind eye to it, and when it was brought to his attention, he would sweep it under the rug. Thus, enabling that behavior, and Pat Patterson, for all intents and purposes, would continue to do that throughout the years. Not to the same extent, because I believe it died down, but he was able to still kind of do sexually suggestive things here and there. Furthermore, to other scandals, the steroid case in the early 90s. Oh, and also where Vince had sexually assaulted a female referee. And this was probably one of the most egregious things inside of the doc, where ultimately Vince had said, well,
Had it been a rape, the statute of limitations had run out. So, I mean, it's all kind of crap like that people are digging up and trying to find something on you.
what?
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Wait a minute, we're 3 weeks down in the NFL season and week 4 is on the horizon, and I picked up another W this past weekend on Underdog, this time on the draft side. And this is the first time I did it since the playoffs of last year, and you can see I'm getting nothing but W's. Every primetime game, I'm going live, and you're seeing me get these W's in real time. And to make matters even better, all September long, Underdog is running a new promo every single day. And for new customers who sign up downloading the app using my promo code Adonis, you'll receive a free pick. That's just Underdog looking out for you, and you can pair that free pick with all of the different promos that they have every single day. Sunday's almost here. Do not miss this opportunity. So click the link in my description or scan this QR code right here. Download the Underdog app. Use promo code Adonis. Get yourself a free pick and let them know I sent you.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Had it been a rape, the statute of limitations had run out. So, I mean, it's all kind of crap like that people are digging up and trying to find something on you.
What? The moment that I heard that come out of Vince McMahon's mouth, I said, this dude is an absolute tyrant. It's not as if we didn't know he was a tyrant before, but the fact that you would say something like this, unprovoked, just shows the type of character that he is. Moving forward from there, the steroid trial in '93, in which it was the United States versus Vince McMahon, where steroids were illegal across all realms of sports. And by the grace of God, Vince McMahon was able to get a get out of jail free card. How was that? Well, Hulk Hogan was deemed immunity on the stand, and Hulk turned heel.
I was granted immunity. I know what I'm gonna say.
And defended McMahon and said, hey, McMahon never once told us to go and take steroids, nor did he distribute it to us, because ultimately the trial was that McMahon was embezzling money from Titan Sports in an effort to now purchase steroids from Dr. Zahorian, who I believe is in prison right now. Did he pass away? Somebody mentioned in the comment section. There's an extensive video on a number of these scandals, might I add, or I should say extensive episodes by Dark Side of the Ring, so you check them out if you guys were unaware of what transpired, or you could look into the brief, touching on it in the doc for Vince McMahon. Also, I have those clips up on the Patreon, but nonetheless, you have, that was what the alleged thing was, embezzling money from Titan Sports to then purchase steroids from Dr. Zahorian and distribute it amongst the talent. And constantly you heard individuals like Tony Atlas say, hey, I was on steroids before I made it to WWE, but Vince had never told me to go and take steroids, despite the fact that he never once had said, hey, if you taking them, stop, or whatever the case may be. He turned a blind eye to it. Bret Hart said, hey, I never seen Vince encourage individuals to go and take steroids. Hulk Hogan had said he never saw Vince McMahon go and encourage people to take steroids. And truly, in my opinion, I would agree with that. I think for Vince, it was one of those things in which he enabled individuals who took it by not going and stopping them. However, I don't think he made it a point to go and hand individuals said syringes to go and inject it into their butt cheeks. But there was no denying that there was an incredible amount of steroid use from within the company. There was that scandal that existed. Then furthermore, to the odd storylines, there was a lawsuit with Sable in '99, where Sable had alleged that there was a sexual harassment that was made towards her, wanting her to do sexually suggestive things and storylines, and she refused. Levels of degradation, if you would, and things of that nature, where you're degrading yourself, degradation, and degrading yourself in storylines. Trish Stratus talked about the storyline in which she was on her knees barking for McMahon. But in the Sable case, I think that was a load of absolute bullocks. Why is that? Well, she came back to work 4 years later and did the exact same kind of things that she was doing in '98. So for Sable, hey, you on your own. But I ain't gonna say too much. Why? Because Sable's last name is what? And I don't want those problems. Now, moving forward from there, you had the 2006 incident.
There was a woman who worked at a tanning salon, and she alleged that Vince McMahon had shown her naked photos of himself and had groped her.
Sir! The alleged rape that Ashley Mazzaro happened to have in Kuwait, brought it to Mr. McMahon. Mr. McMahon not only denied those claims towards her, but also publicly swept it under the rug. 10 years later, she takes her own life.
She accused WWE of not responding seriously to her allegations when she told them. She says that Vince McMahon knew about it and that WWE functionally covered it up to protect the business.
They also touched on Vince's mass amount of affairs. This man had an interview with Playboy in, I believe it was 2001, where he didn't even apologize for all of the affairs that he had on Linda. In fact, he said, well, the sex was amazing, but emotionally, I regret it because Linda really took it hard. Sir, have you no shame? But Paul Heyman brought it back home because he said, well, for all intents and purposes, in Vince McMahon's case,
Vince McMahon has had one truly monogamous relationship with the business that he built.
And that is absolutely true 110%, because truly that was his baby and truly his spouse. Hence why he's probably feeling like he's in hell every single day that he's no longer attached to said business. There was some positives that they touched on, not only of the rise of McMahon and the successes of winning the Monday Night War and then going public and the stock getting incredibly high and ultimately becoming said billionaire. They touched on a very somber, heart, moving situation with Shane McMahon, where Shane was just a kid who wanted to be, acknowledged and given that attaboy, the pat on the back, I'm proud of you, son, moment from his dad. And he didn't quite get that until WrestleMania 32, when he fought against The Undertaker.
Always looking for that pat on the back from my dad. I got a hug that night.
You ever wondered to yourself why Shane was such a daredevil, doing the absolute most when he did not need to do so? Like, a lot of people looked at Shane McMahon like, all right, you're the son of Vince. You could essentially, you know, live on easy mode. You ain't got to do too much. Maybe he's overcompensating for something, hence why he's going out there and pretty much putting his life in danger every single time you see this man in a match. But all he wanted was the acknowledgement of his father, and that was something that millions upon millions of people can relate to. So it was a tearjerker of a moment. And that's one of the things that I looked at it like, hey man, listen, that was very heartwarming. Even furthermore, Bruce Pritchard, who people were saying was the #1 meat writer for McMahon, he revealed that had it not been for Vince getting the best medical care for his wife, she would have passed from cancer 24 years ago.
My wife was given a 4-year life expectancy. That was 24 years ago.
Congratulations! Oh my God.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
All these knockout commentaries had me thinking, why don't I knock someone out myself? So I came up with Knockdown Tea, guaranteed to help you sleep longer, sleep better, relax, and restore. Passion fruit flavored, so you know it's good. Simply take it 30 minutes to an hour before you go to sleep, and our slogan is 1 cup down for the count, 2 cups, throw in the towel. So make sure you click the link in my description. Head over to knockdowntea.com and grab your first pack today.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
That was 24 years ago.
And he's gonna ride for not only his coworker, but that's a lifelong friend. And despite how you may feel about Vince and all the stuff that Vince had done, although you can acknowledge, you know, the vile human being that he is, you can also acknowledge the good things that he did as well.
And that was because Vince McMahon made sure that she got the best care that was available.
That doesn't exonerate the bad things, but you can have two different things be true at the very same time. Stephanie McMahon talked about, you know, the role of what Vince played in her life. And there was also very odd storylines where Vince had attempted to get a storyline where it would be him who impregnated Steph and all this other stuff. And you've seen the times in which I believe he had a match at No Mercy 2003, where he fought Steph like a week before her wedding. There was a ton of different storylines where he incorporated real life situations and allegations into storylines, and then moments in which wrestlers would say no, well, get ready to get humiliated. Trish Stratus talked about how she ended up losing the title to Mickie James because she had denied, you know, a particular kind of storyline angle. But all in all, they also touched on the Benoit tragedy as well. This is the first time that you had Vince McMahon talk about the Chris Benoit incident since what, 2007? And I love the fact that they included Chris Nowitzki in there as well, because he's the individual who studied Benoit's brain. He's the one whose studies came to the conclusion that Benoit's brain was that of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient, and he just wasn't all there. And then you mix that in with the steroid use, you probably got a complete catastrophe of a situation. Now, granted, I've touched on this in my review of The Dark Side of the Ring, and I believe two things can be true in the same realm as well, where if people were to go and say, hey, fuck Benoit, that man's a tyrant, killed his entire family, completely with you. If you were to say, hey, Benoit didn't know what the hell he was doing, the man had CTE, I'm with you as well. I would also agree with Paul Heyman.
Nancy and Daniel had no option. He did.
I completely agree. Vince McMahon simply said,
what happened to Chris Benoit? Human beings are flawed. Chris went nuts. It happens in every form of life and everything. So that's the only thing I can take away from it.
But if you take a look at the change in the wellness, the health and wellness policies in WWE from after that incident, it's gotten substantially better. Now, granted, 2017 to 2014, it's night and day for how superstars were treated. 2014 to 2024, it's completely different for how they were treated. So it's gotten better in light of that unfortunate tragedy. So they were able to spin that negative into a positive over time, and now you have less injuries. Concussions are actually taken seriously, despite the fact that Steve Austin had mentioned in the doc, hey, I'm not a CTE guy.
I'm not a CTE
guy. Just don't believe in it.
They made a transition from WWE TV 14 to WWE PG, not only in an effort of the sponsorships, but also the health and wellness of the superstars. And it's been nothing but positivity for the populace inside of the company, and then the revenue on the executive side, despite the fact that the audience may want to see more, you know, adult kind of content or more physical kind of content. Would that be at the behest of the superstars? Yes. So ultimately they're going to lean towards, you know, the health and wellness of the wrestlers, and kudos to McMahon spearheading that move, because it wouldn't have happened without his approval. But all in all, the doc touched on a ton of different things. And then ultimately at the end, they were asking, hey, what do you think will be Vince's lasting legacy? And Tony Atlas probably put it the best way, where he said,
the greatest promoter of all time.
All in all, the way that I saw it, right? Because I watched it twice. So that's pretty much all 6 episodes on 2 different occasions, allocated over 12 hours to watching the doc, just to really seep in the information that was shared. A ton of it I had already seen, but those that I wasn't aware of, I was able to take away that, yes, Vince McMahon is indeed the biggest important factor in the history of professional wrestling. He will go down in history not only as the greatest promoter, not only as the greatest heel in the business, but when you talk about that of a visionary, nobody touched Vince McMahon. However, everything that it took for him to build this empire, it crumbled, because this is a man who unfortunately was a slave to his vices and continued to abuse his power throughout the years, from the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s to the 2010s. He continued to take advantage of people and rub his power in people's faces. And now it's all starting to come and catch back up to him.
What's the other brain thinking about now?
Something having a lot of fun, and it's involving sex.
You sick freak! What a sick freak.
But the one thing they cannot deny is he is truly what he has always wanted to be. And that is a heat magnet, the greatest heel of all time, and an incredibly polarizing figure. But overall, I'm curious what you guys took away from the documentary, because truly, I think it was a very good watch. I think all wrestling fans should go tune in and watch it if you haven't watched it. Again, I can't put all of these clips in full length here on YouTube because it's going to be blocked, but I have them in full length over on Patreon, so feel free to go and check those out. But link will be in the description. But overall, for Vince, from me to you, your just desserts are here. I would like to say that there was a trap card that was activated, but you, sir, are the individual who is wielding the very dual deck that is bringing you to the Shadow Realm, sir. So do yourself a favor and put your motherfucking head back down.
Yeah! Fire! What? Go die.
Hey, I appreciate you watching the entire video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button on the way out if you haven't already. And on top of that, hit that notification bell as well. For whatever reason, YouTube's only showing my videos to 20% of my subscribers. So if you have already turned on the notification bell, turn it off, turn it back on. If you never turn it on, turn it on. I appreciate you.